Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to another session of Focus on Liberia on the marketplace where we talk everything finance, business, and economics. I'm excited today to be joined by Depu Zuo, who is actually one of the guests. My co-host Alex. You know, what is today's a Christmas day, so we won't want to keep you for too long. Today we want to take an hour and talk about a very special topic today, which is today's a Christmas day, so we won't want to keep you for too long. Right, which is going to be about growth without liquidity. Um, so myself here, my name is Gabriel Carter. I'm the co-host here. Before we get into the topic, I would like to, turn this over to Depu to introduce himself. I know Depu has been with us several times on the show, so he's not new here. He's just like myself, he's a subject matter expert, so we tap into his expertise to bring him here to guide us through. Same as well with Alex. So, Depu, please, I know you're not new here, but please just introduce yourself to the audience for us, please.
Oh, thank you very much, Gabriel. My name is Depu, for those of you who don't know me out there. Currently, I run the Partnership for Sustainable Development in Liberia. We do consultancy and do organization work, particularly on policy issue. And I'm here for the Christmas break, and hopefully we're going to get our feet wet in the new year to see how best to do some more work.
Yeah. Alex, welcome. And I, I know you're probably taking a break from eating, but we all are. But good to have you here, buddy. Please introduce yourself. I know you're.
Thank you, Gabriel, and thank you, Depu, for joining us on this Christmas day. As you can see, I got some mixed stuff in this.
Leftovers.
If you hear some music in the background, don't blame me, because my house is full today. I got my kids over, and then family members are coming over from Texas around our vicinity here. So I will have a full house in a few hours. And so sorry for the background, and I don't have a lot of light because I had to change my position just to find a quiet area in the house. Everywhere in the house, there are people in the house. All the rooms are occupied. So, but welcome again. Today we'll be talking about we dive into what we term growth without liquidity,
right.
And then this is I believe Gibbons one of his favorite topics. So we will tap into his brains, and then we brought on Depu, who is the policy guy here, to kind of drive it through from the perspective of the central bank and other stuff, and based on his experience, having assisted in drafting the Propo Agenda for Prosperity and Development, and then I don't know what is Propo again, but we will hear from Depu.
Yes, I know. It's the document is still Propo, the implementation, whatever it is, we still have to look at it from that perspective that it is still Propo.
Mm-hmm. So I like Gabriel. Can you give some this whole thing about liquidity, about growth, how liquidity spurs growth, or
Right.
how growth happens without liquidity, especially the global liquidity movement. Can you give a little perspective within the context of the global liquidity trend?
Yeah. Thank you. I don't. Dennis, do we have the first slide up? That chart. I don't know if we can put that up. If not, I can do a free flow narrative on that. But yeah, again, thank you for again. This is a very special topic. I think one way or another we've covered some part of the central banks and the commercial banks in some. I think earlier on during the year. And I think this topic came about because of the recent printing of the $48 billion. As you guys are aware, uh, $4 billion of that printing of that money was actually brought into the is about to be infused in a country. I think on November 15 of this year, right? Um, so if you look at the global context of what's happening in the economy right now, initially when this whole pandemic happened, we were disrupted. We talked about, I think on this show, we talked about the supply chain disruption, and we know that was impacting inflation. And then the CPI numbers came out recently, which shows now we're not just combating the cost side inflation anymore. There's demand side inflation now, right? So what's happening right now
Hey,
in the world is that,
Gabriel, let
yeah,
me hold you there a little bit.
right.
I think sometimes we need to kind of like what is CPI because we're talking to like
Okay,
a different.
okay,
We're
all right.
breaking our audience
I
at
think,
different
yeah,
levels. So
too
please,
much, too much
yeah.
jargon, too much
Mhm,
econ
mhm.
jargon and financial jargon. So so CPI is what we call consumer price index. Consumer price index is just pretty much the rate of the money we pay for a basket of goods, right? In a country, right?
But
And
let me pivot. Let me go back a little bit. When we say liquidity, is it like somebody's wasting water, liquid, or what is liquidity?
all right, let
When
me
we
land with my thoughts. Then I will
okay,
answer that question. So in the war, we had disruption within the economy, right? And what government central banks around the world were doing, they were, especially here, they were buying, not just in the United States, around the world, they were buying what we call securities. So they're buying central bank bonds to allow, when they buy, when those central banks buy bonds from the central banks, right? I mean, from the commercial banks, I mean, money go into the banks, right? So it gives them liquidity. What it means, liquidity, it gives them enough money for them to have to be lending to the consumer and businesses within the country. So we had that disruption, right? Now, the context, what is happening right now, there's a slow up in the process, right? They're easing on that. So they're tightening right now. So that means they're not buying anymore. They're not putting no much liquidity in the market because the global economy is stronger, right? To the point right now, we're talking about raise 3 times next year, right? So that's the global context. The reason why I wanted to talk about this in the Liberian context is because of what is happening right now. As I said earlier, we have 4 billion that is about to be infused within the Liberian economy, according to the central bank governor, right? If I may quote him here directly, right? It says the arrival of the $100 Liberian banknote is an important milestone in addressing the persistent. Now, I want you guys to pay attention to this: persistent liquidity challenges in the Liberian economy that the Liberian economy has faced, right? Year over year, right? So pay key attention to this word: persistent, and it has been year over year. The central bank will continue to work to ease the liquidity challenges in the commercial banks, mainly during the festive season, right? So I want to leave that. That is his statement, unquote, right? So we're putting this 4 billion Liberian dollars within the economy because of the persistent and the year over year liquidity challenges that the economy has had, right? And this is not something that is just happening. This has been happening. How many times have you guys gone to, several times where you've gone to the banks and you try to take money out? They will tell you, hey, we can't give you all the money that you're asking for, or sometimes they will tell you, hey, the
yeah,
money is
but
out, right?
Gabriel, I'm listening to you, but even as somebody who has some expertise in this area, I'm still confused. All right,
What's your confusion
I'm
about?
confused about where you're coming from and where you're trying to go.
Okay,
So that is why I try to break you there for us to go step by step before Depo comes in. All right, this whole liquidity thing we're talking about today and
right,
growth. All
right.
right, can we define in the simplest form as possible what is liquidity?
Okay, let me do that for the audience, right? So liquidity is pretty much means that there is enough capital in the market, in the banking sectors, to meet the consumer and business need for the consumer in the
So
economy,
once again,
right?
what is capital?
So
There's enough
money, so
capital.
money. I don't want to dumb down my discussion because I don't want to think that our audience don't know what I'm talking about when I say money. I mean capital, but I will do that for the sake of, if you want to have that dumbed down. So capital mean money. We don't have enough liquidity. Mean we don't have liquidity. Mean money in the banking sectors to be able to meet the investment, the banking and consumer needs of the country. Right now, The reason why I
So
wanted us
that means liquidity means there is enough money available in the economy or in the country.
in the economy. So in your economy is usually held within the banking sector, right? Within the banking sector.
You will know that I said economy, then I said the country, because
Yes,
in the
yes.
economy is a different thing than in the country where people have access to the money, where people have money in their pocket, where
So
money, the circular flow of money, the money goes around, right?
right.
Mhm.
So in the liquidity means there is enough capital in the economy. In the economy means in the whether regardless where you held it, whether it's being held in the banking sector or I mean in the central banks or commercial banks or savings and loans, right? Or even if you want to consider certain intermediaries like the venture capitals and such, that means there is money in there to meet the what we call investment needs of the businesses within our country. Now, the part that we wanted to compare with what we were looking at today, which is the subject of our discussion today, is the growth that we were expecting, right? We had 3.2% growth this year. We're about to grow 4.2 next year, and 2023 we're
So
going up
what
4.9.
is growth? What is, when you say growth, what it means?
So growth within an economy is pretty much your GDP growing. So GDP is gross domestic product. Gross domestic product is the net of all goods and services produced within the country within the service within a period of the year, right? So in that period, this year we grew
So when the
3.2%.
GDP is growing, that means people getting more salary, people getting the prices of goods are low, people are employed, people building their homes, the woman is selling their food, they're sending their children to school. What does that mean?
So what it means is that if there's growth, doesn't mean people are getting paid. It just means that there's an expansion within the economy, right? I mean, the people are trading with each other, like you said. People are building more homes. People are opening more businesses. People are doing a lot of trades, and over time, where the economy was the year before, it has grown because a lot of that has happened. It has grown over a year. That's how you have growth within the country, right? That means
So
that's how you
how
make.
does that tie into the liquidity? That means the availability of money.
So perfect. I'm glad you asked that question. So
Mm.
wait, let me give you the context. With any frontier market, whether it's frontier, emerging market, or even developed market, with those businesses starting, right? The existing of businesses is pretty much two things. They're there to make profit. Even the nonprofits are there to make profit, right? So when those businesses are grown, whether through expansion or acquisition, whether organic or through acquisitions, they make money, right? When businesses make money, there's four things they can do with it, right? They can either reinvest that money through what we call capital expenditure. So that means they're buying more equipment, machineries, and all of these things, right? They can pay dividends to their shareholders, right? Or they can actually sit on that money, right? Or they can buy back their shares. We makes them more valuable. But in this case, right? So that's how that's how the expansion happened, right? When that happens, if you have more companies making more money, given that they're not spending too much on their shareholders and they're not investing all of it, even if they're doing some of that, they have the tendency to put some away for rainy days or for reinvestments, right? That's how in a sense, in the long term, it helps ease the liquidity problem. It helps give those companies more money in their account for them to be able to continue to invest, right? In our case, in a typical economy, that's what happens. But in our case, we have a disconnect. We have a disconnect there. We're expected to grow, right? But we don't have the liquidity in our economy to fund that growth, even the 4.2%, right? This is why every now and then you will see the central bank printing money to be infused in the economy, even in the economy that we have that is not a production base. Most like we're not a production based economy, right? So in a typical production based economy, that growth will cause the central bank to print money to be infused in our country. But because we're not a production-based economy, it creates a disconnect that the government will continue to keep printing money and keep putting in money, and that growth, that liquidity that we need, isn't coming from the business sector or the financial sector, right? Our banks, what you can call them, I can say they're illiquid because of that. So the central bank have to step in to continue to put money into the economy because they don't have that liquidity. So that's the disconnect that we want to talk about today.
So, Depu, let me pivot to you a little bit. Gabriel, while we do that, can you put yourself on mute because we hear some sound in the background? I don't know whether it's from you or from Dennis.
No,
Depu has put himself on mute. I put myself on mute, but we still hear the sound. So let's isolate where the problem
I think
is.
it's coming from Dennis.
Okay, Depu, so we're trying to define, because the next level we'll start talking about the Liberia context. So, but I want us to understand because the topic we're dealing with today is growth with our liquidity, all right?
Yes.
Or vice versa. Now, so we need to understand what is liquidity and then what is growth and how liquidity and growth, intersect.
Oh, quite interesting. Thank you so much, Gabriel, for bringing this conversation. What is important to know is on the global context, we could still define it as asset or security that can be converted into cash without affecting the market price or any other thing. That's the best way to define it. In a context, I would say in the layman term in Liberia, most often when I'm here, I always want for the listeners to focus on Liberia.
Yeah.
Since we are focusing on Liberia, in terms of looking at the security and assets, we'll term it as the availability of money and other collaterals, something that can be used for transaction purpose in the economy. So that's why it's called liquidity of these things. So now, in terms of where we are,
let me hold you there. The availability of money and other collateral.
Yes.
In the market,
in the economy, in the country.
Okay. So
for transaction purpose.
That collateral there, that the one I can get to the bank to say I want loan.
The one that I can take today, I can take this one today and get cash from somebody today. I can say I will take this thing to this place and get money to do what I want to do. Someone who is in Waterside is saying, okay, I'm taking my gold chain now to go to a sushi club and say, look, I have the business, goods are coming from Guinea and no money now. Okay, here is what I have. Where there's more money availability for you to get that transaction done. That's what I call security, and that's the asset. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about.
For example, back in the day, Backer Matthew took all our paper saving bonds.
Yes.
We used that to register the United People's Party or something like that, right?
Yes.
So that collateral, that saving bond he collected from that people, that's something like collateral, right?
Yeah, it became part of they became owners of the identical action party or whatever party they had. They were selling their asset. They were becoming a part by giving their assets, so that in the long run, when there's money in it tomorrow, they will get back what they put in. So that's what they with interest. That's the kind of thing we're talking about.
So therefore, the availability of money and other collateral.
The availability of money and other collateral in the system help the economy to grow. If you don't have the cash today, you don't have any other thing that people can use to carry on transaction, the economy doesn't grow. It remains stagnant. So that's one of the main things that we face globally. But in the context of Liberia, I think 2 years ago in 2019, there where the problem came from, that there were this situation of completely lack of money, that people want to get money from their deposit or bank account to go do transaction. They could not see it. They go to people who are money exchanger and say, okay, I have these shoes. Can you hold this shoe or go today and give me this money? And the person says, no, I don't have money because the bank could not provide the money. So it became a problem. So the growth of Liberian economy became stagnant. Things became rough because people got afraid. They panic came into the bank or got bank run. People were now running to the bank, taking their money. So the money finished in the market. If no money in my house today, I will not buy food for my children the 1 week. So people were rushing to the bank, taking their money from there, putting it in a home for safety because they know now that there's serious liquidity challenge, no money in the country. So that's the kind of thing that evolved in 2019. And with that, what is always important is for the central bank or those responsible for monetary policy to look at and say, what caused this problem?
Right.
Let's look at the root of the problem. And it was not something that happened overnight. It's something that the economy have been experiencing that we needed to have invested and say, look, in the long run, if people who holding money say today we're not spending our money, what will happen to the country? Because in the time past, study has shown that the money that in the country, only 15% of the money in the country were in the banking system. There where the challenge is. To say that central bank is saying we got 15% of our money, broad money, the more money that in the country is in the bank, it means that the rest of the money is outside. Then the country is vulnerable. Yep. What is important there is we have been a way that we can bring the money that is outside in everybody's hands in the banking system so that when someone needs money today to buy goods, to go abroad, to do anything, then they will access it. Or we have a situation where completely everything dry out. And that was what we call confidence crisis in the economy. And that what led to bank run. So with the bank run, it was a very good thing, good experience in my mind. For me, I was out for some time. Later on, I went to Liberia. But the good lesson learned from there is that there are other means of transaction. Since Liberia is more a cash economy, that everything is done with cash, are there other medium of exchange, other things that we can use that you can buy with it without paying cash so that someone will worry that, I'm going to buy gas today. Since I don't have $50 in my pocket, I still need something to show or to do to carry on transaction. That's how the rescue strategy and the initiative was adopted. And today you have the mobile money, for example.
Yeah, Debu, you're going a little too far into.
I'm going fast, eh? I'm sorry.
You're going too far into the conversation. So, what before we move into the Liberia context and the problems, the challenges, Gabriel mentioned about liquidity challenges that have been facing our country, and now you were talking about, you give reference to 2019 and all that stuff. Before I go into that, let me ask a question, and anybody can take a peek at it. Can there be growth without liquidity? Now that we understand what is liquidity, we know that liquidity is the availability of money and other things, other assets, collateral in the country or in the economy. Can there be growth without those things, without liquidity?
I want to take take on that question, and Depu, you can come in as well. Absolutely not. There cannot be growth if you don't have liquidity, because in a functioning economy, you need to have liquidity to whether, even if it's assets or whatever it is, even in the form of collateral or even if it's the form of cash, right? You need that availability, not only the availability, but you need people to have access to it, right? In order for that for you to be able to sustain that growth. So let's say hypothetically, how we're expecting this 4.2% growth in 2023, right? If we don't have the amount of money, which is what some of this thing that the central bank is actually doing right now, that 48 billion, they're putting in 4 billion within the economy, to have those people being able to transact, to be either go to bank's loan to take out bank loan or bring out their collateral and pledge the collateral to get bank loan or whatever, what have you, right? We won't, in terms of measuring real growth next year, we won't be able to achieve it, right? Because in order to expand, that demand has to come from business expansion, right? You cannot just grow. You cannot just apply this whole Keynesian model where you say the government have to spend and that expansion with the government spending will grow the economy. No, it has to be driven from the business side. And from the business side, in order for the business side to grow, there has to be access to capital, access to those collateral, and in exchange of it, in order for those expansion, in order for that expansion to happen. Business expansion is economic expansion is basically your economy growing. More people starting businesses, more people trading. Mom was going to China buying her goods to be able to sell, not just for this season because a lot of people are coming in Liberia, but she should be able to do that year over year, year over year, over time, and be able to continue for that to be sustainable. So to answer the question in short, there cannot be growth without liquidity. You cannot grow your economy if you don't have a fundamental functioning well or a financial market that is able to fund that the need of businesses within our country.
But Liberia is, let me put it this way, playing the devil's advocate, Liberia is growing. So is Liberia growing without liquidity, Gabriel?
And that was part of the crux of this discussion, right? So it is growing. There's the liquidity that we're putting in the economy is basically coming from the central bank, and that is the big problem that I have with that, right? It should be coming from business expansion. You should not just rely on the central bank to just keep printing money and putting money into the economy, right? It should be coming from generating from expansion from a production-based economy, right? Yes, if that growth is happening, that could be, and this is the reason why I read the central bank governor statement. He said the money that they're putting in there is for the festive season, right? The festive season. So the next question I think the central bank has to do it is, if you put that money in within the festive season, how do you get it out after the festive season, right? One. But he also went as far to say it is to address the persistent liquidity problem that has been happening year over year, right? So that means there is no liquidity within the market. If you don't have liquidity within the market, you cannot grow, right? So that money that is being infused within the economy is the anticipation of the expected growth that is to come next year, which is the 4.2%, right? So you need that money in. But my argument here is that it shouldn't be coming from the central bank. It should be growth based. Like if the businesses are growing, you go to the bank, more people asking for bank loan, then that demand should now be transmitted to the central bank to say, oh, we can print more money, right? That's the reason why I think there cannot be growth without.
So Gabriel, when I understand, my understanding of that whole concept you're trying to talk about, the circular flow of money, right?
Perfect.
That means the money comes from the central banks, it goes to the commercial bank, it goes to the people,
Businesses, right?
businesses,
And
individuals.
consumers, right?
They buy goods, they do this, they trade, the money goes back into the bank, then it goes back in the central bank, then it comes back. So it goes in that flow, right?
Circle of, right.
But it seems as though from what you're explaining in Liberia, it continue to come to the central is one way. It
Thank
continue
you.
to come from the central bank
Thank
and
you.
it continue to. So where is the money? Is it going back into the central bank?
That was one of the questions that I wanted us to address. And therefore, let me answer this, and I'll let you talk. That was one of the questions that I wanted us to address. You see, we had the perfect opportunity after the war to build a foundational financial system that would have sustained the level of growth year over year that we're having now without any the central bank would have been involved, but it would have been from a regulatory standpoint. And in crisis, the only time we would have needed them to do that will actually in crisis like the COVID or the Ebola for them to put money into the economy, right? If we had built a fundamental financial system, even if we had an economy, a president who is reckless, who is doing so much with the economy that people can figure out our economy would have been able to land on that financial system right after the person leave and be able to sustain that growth, right? But it's not happening right now. What is happening is that the money that is keep going into Liberian economy, it comes in and it disappears, and we say, oh, we make up excuses to say, oh, it's because people are going back to Liberia this festive season. A lot of people are trading. No, that's not why. One of the problems that is causing us to have this problem is that, one, I said it earlier, we don't have a production-based economy. Two is that if you look at our central bank, 7 of them are foreign owned, right? businesses, whether businesses or banks, they're indebted to their shareholders. If you have a business, the shareholders are in America, you make your money in Liberia, guess where you paying your dividend to, Alex, right? You're paying your dividends to the shareholders in America, right? So what is that doing? You're taking the money from Liberia and sending it to shareholders. And because predominantly our central banks are, most of them are foreign owned, that actually helps take that money out of the economy, right? This is part of the reason why. That's one of the two reasons why we're having this liquidity problem. So fundamentally, it has to do with the way we structure our financial system. Two, and it's one of the biggest reasons is because we're not a production-based economy. But I will leave it on those two notes for now. Yeah.
So Depu, what? Let me ask a direct question. Since you're focusing on Liberia, what does the economy of Liberia continue to face consistent liquidity problem?
Thank you. Gabriel was trying to explain the issue of liquidity, but then let's just look at a simple concept in economics. It's a quantitative theory of money. The reality here is that money supply depends the number of times that a dollar circulates in the economy cause the growth. Mm-hmm. Because the reality is that if a dollar is turned over to 5 people in a day, 5 person a day, the person borrow a dollar here and take it to another person, and 30% want to buy food. A guy who buying food spend dollar on the food, and the man who actually sells the food is looking for peanuts and take it dollar and go spend on the peanut. And what grow the economy? That's what is very much important for us to look at. So every economy, the first concern would be the speed at which, or the velocity and the supply of money. These are the basic things that people are supposed to be looking at to be determining growth. Even though the issue of price is very much important because it also addresses the issue of the inflation. When price is very high, people will not be willing to buy, and it will also cause stagnation. But what is very important there is that what we call inclusion financial services or access to capital, or the number of time that a cash or a capital circulating in the economy contribute to the growth. So one of the problems that Liberia faces is that because it's a cash economy and many people have the cash, and our financial institution, the banking system, there's no other instrument that people can have access to cash. People hold what we call holding. People take the cash and say, okay, to prove, culturally proving that you are a wealthy entity or wealthy company is to keep the cash. So for this reason, there's confidence crisis in the banking system. If I put my cash there today, will I have access to transact as soon as possible when I need the money? Can I have immediate access to my cash? There is where the confidence crisis is, and Liberia as a country is still faced with this. So one of the things that we as Liberian and the economy is moving towards, the country is trying to improve on, is that, look, are there other means of transaction that people can do purchases or production or sales without actually carrying the cash with them, so that the rest of the security will be clear like that? Is there a way that we can do that? Are there instruments that we can use? So for that reason, you have to develop financial inclusion system, because the vulnerable people, the poor people who need money, the cost of transaction from a farmer, if it's taking him 2 days to transact just to withdraw money from the bank to go pay workers, it makes it difficult for production to improve. So it actually delay productivity and production on the agriculture farmers, or even the traders, the cross-border trader, who know fully well that anytime they will go out of goods, but they need to reorder or buy, if they cannot have access to cash, it becomes difficult for growth to take place. So with this confidence crisis, it makes most of the entrepreneurs or business owners, or in fact multilateral corporations that are operating in international organizations that are operating in the country, there where the challenge is that if they need money anytime to pay employee to do any project, that it cannot go out of cash. Once they go to the bank and they cannot access the bank, it creates panic. They say, no, we will not hold this money in the bank anymore. We'll take it on the side. So that's why in terms of financial inclusion, in terms of financial services, monetary policy, that the central bank started to embark on the financial inclusion strategy. And some of the discussion that we have prior to the PAPD is that, look, you have a strategy. How do we implement it? Because the first thing I did that pool of people, majority of your people are not in the banking system. Most of their money is outside the banking system. If all of your money is outside the banking system, a more informal base make this economy more formal. That people will know that, look, anytime I need transaction, I need to do transaction, I can have access to cash. So that strategy is going fine. And it was difficult. It's to lift the poor people out of poverty at the same time to give, a cushion for multilateral corporations or big companies to have money to spend. For example, beer factory. The beer factory do a sale today on a beer. Their daily sale will not be not less than 25 million Liberian dollar. If they can deposit this money, 25 million Liberian dollar, and anytime they want money to order for goods and they have it, beer factory will not have a vault or a cash bank in the house or at the factory to keep money, so that anytime they need something, they get it. So these are some of the things that the banking system, the commercial banks and the central bank will have to look at. Even the commercial banks that are also responsible for depositors' money. This is where you look at in terms of reserve ratio. If the people say, look, we have deposited money, you have this money, the more money you have, the more you spend it. So what we're going to be doing now, you need to take commercial bank, give some of their reserve to the central bank to keep it. If in case depositor need cash today, they go back to central bank and they cannot have access to their reserve. What happened? They create panic in the commercial bank operation and also create problem for their customers. So it becomes difficult. These are some of the reasons why the growth of Liberian economy continue to stagnate, and also the volatility in all the transactions in the economy. Now, what is important here is, I don't know, we don't want to go to the next step. But what is important here is that for us to have a monetary policy that assure the commercial banks of the availability of cash, of reserve anytime, that if you need, the depositor need your money, they can have it. The depositor they don't get access to their money, then they undermine the commercial bank's operation. So there where the central bank and the commercial bank needed to have worked on it, and they are working on it in terms of inclusion. They have to increase other services. And what the central bank had done, they started some in the past regime, but it wasn't difficult to get the money outside the banking system, was to introduce a T-bill. I know you are aware of the treasury bill.
Yes.
So that people will say, okay, you know what? This is the best way we can introduce to get the money outside and bring it in the system. So they offered a T-bill and gave it to Liberian, to commercial bank. It was media around the commercial bank. So commercial bank were buying the T-bill. It was a way of bringing back the money into the system. So that helped a little bit. Now, central bank decided, no, instead of dealing with commercial bank, let also go to individual. So they opened the market up. As they opened the market, they also gave opportunity for individual to have confidence in the system, and it started growing. And there where the confidence is coming online in the system, where they are getting more cash outside of the banking system and bringing it in. And I will just give you a statistic that as of 2019, January, the broad money in the country was total, that including the transfer, deposit, and the rest of it, it was around $96 billion. And obviously, how do you look at that?
Liberian
dollar.
Okay.
Liberian dollar. You will see that the cash outside of bank at the time was around 16 billion. What do you do? So the bank gradually started moving towards this to see how best to build confidence in the system, to bring in the money back into the system. Without this, it will be difficult for them to have control. And that's one of the main reasons why they were asking commercial bank, look, deal with your customer and give us, let's see your daily deposit and withdrawal rate. And let's see your daily transaction. That will determine the volume of cash that needed for daily transaction. These are some of the main data that you will need to make sure that you stabilize it. As the demand increase for daily cash transaction, then that means that there's a need for us to print new money. I know this debate of printing new money was like, oh, it's going to increase the inflation. It's true. But the money that you need to allow it circulate in the economy, you don't have control over as a central bank. What you have in your reserve, it's not there. Commercial bank request for money today, they can't find it. Assurance is not there. So that was the level of high financial insecurity. I can tell you anything that one time I was telling people that we were heading toward a green scenario where people could not have money, they want to be rushing.
Yeah.
So it was good that the bank maturely and handled this issue by working with a commercial bank, expanding the whole T-bill to private individual. And so companies, not commercial bank, companies started buying the T-bill, started bringing in cash, because the reality there is that you tell beer factory today, bring in what you have, you take it at 25%. Obviously, beer factory will dispose of all the Liberian data they have. You announce it to any of the commercial banks, private company or individual, you will obviously see that they will be rushing for it. That's why he have.
Depo, let me hold you there a little bit, because I'm reading some of the comments here, and what's the Tessa Bar says you are discussing the actual issues affecting our economy. And Perfect Manager Maurice Kroma asked a question. He made a comment here which I would like to use to kind of direct some thoughts here. All right, Perfect Manager, right? But you cannot demand people to join the formal sector. The state has to assure the people that their money are available at any time. So you've explained things with good understanding of what is happening in the economy. Now, back to the question that why the economy of Liberia continue to face consistent liquidity challenge. Can you talk about narrow in on 2 or 3 key reasons why we continue to face, because you've talked a lot of things around it. Now, I want you to say, these are the 2 or 3 reasons why we continue to face this liquidity challenge.
I think I gave several reasons, but one reason there is that, first of all, we have a cash economy that anytime the availability of cash to individual is not controlled by the banking system. We got more money controlled by individual, and there's no confidence in the banking system to trust the banking system to hold the cash. So that's one thing that there. So people who are in the formal sector will definitely have problem where they to have challenges in accessing cash. And one Kroma concern is good, that people should have the liberty to have their cash available at any time and to do what they want to do with their cash. Therefore, that's where the financial inclusion and the policy comes in, that central bank should be in the position to provide a security for them, to provide a security for commercial bank, that the reserve is there. At a certain point when the money is, you got more money out, you increase your reserve ratio and they will bring more in. And as the more you have it and they need money out, then you reduce your reserve ratio. With this mechanism, it helps to know how the flow of money in the economy works. Now, Liberia has to actually take, the central bank of Liberia has to take control and feel that, look, they have the independence to do it without any political or national policy influence. And these are the 2 things. So with this, lose control over cash and bring a cash economy, the next thing that there is that the central bank at the time never had that independence to decide on what to do and how to control the monetary policy and monetary flow.
All right.
So
yeah, but you talk about the formal sector and wanting money. Somebody also talked about, one of your commenters, I forgot the person, but the person also said that you cannot force people, because the economy of Liberia, as said by somebody here, says that it's mostly informal.
Right.
And you cannot force people to come from the informal sector to the formal sector. So what mechanism do you build around that?
So I think
this particular flow of money
I think Depu talked a little bit about that, but I think the word that he kept saying, I think something that the central bank absolutely need to look at now is to be able to ensure people's money within the banking sector. That if I bring my deposit right? Let's say 100,000, I put 100,000 in the bank there. You got to be able to ensure some level of it. If I go there to demand it, I should be able to get it back. Or if they say there's the banks collapse, or bank become insolvent, I should be able to get certain level of that money back. It will entice people, is kind of not entice, but kind of like an incentive or nudge them to be able to have a little bit of confidence in the banking sector. But the president is right. You can't force the people to bring it in. Another mistake that we're making here. I don't know if you guys follow the central bank. They opened a regional office, I think, somewhere in I forgot what
Banga,
county, right? Banga, right?
Banga.
Mhm.
You are practically trying to take on the responsibility of the commercial banks by doing that, because you want to have exposure. No, you incentivize, you empower these commercial banks that, hey, even though I know these commercial banks have their own risk appetite, they determine what county they want to go in. You incentivize them to have branches in those county, even if it's not too what I call it, too profitable to them. You incentivize them to do that. You don't go to those county to trying to create regional central banks in those areas, right? You incentivize the bank in those areas, so that way it decreases the bank to person ratio, right? At least, let's say we even have one bank to every 100,000 person, or 200,000 person, it will be okay. You creating assets for them. If you put banks in those areas, it will give people the ability to be able to have easy access to the bank, to be able to bring that money out of the informal sector, to be able to bring it into the formal banking sector. But we got to be able to now look at insuring people's money and be able to expand in banks within those various county. I think those are one of some two things that I will add to that as well.
Yeah, let me
But
record before.
I would slightly disagree with the idea, the regional bank office challenge. You want to control the cash, but the reality there is a confidence problem is in the banking system. And you have a huge rural financial institution and rural cash holders who do not bank into the banking system. Commercial banks themselves, as you go through the system, you will realize that commercial banks, if they have liquidity challenge, they are not able to access cash. And therefore it brings crisis. So you need to make sure that you bring the financial services close to the people. So the central bank is there, the regional office. One good thing I want to say that I commended them for it, because with the availability of a regional bank, it helps, because I know fully well that I did a little survey on the number of commercial bank branches in the various county and the sustainability. Most commercial banks that expanded faster in the various county, they broke down because of the transaction costs and the operation costs are very higher than what they could do. How would they be rescued when there's no availability of cash or funds, nearby? You go to Maryland, cash economy, and a guy is sitting in Maryland making sure that he has a business partner who want to withdraw 10 million Liberian today. The only cash that is available is what? 8 million. And he need additional 2 million. He cannot leave from Maryland to come all the way to Monrovia. So the rest of the thing, it became a constraint for the economy. So the best thing to do is to have a access closer, regional office that ensure that there's a distribution, the access is there.
And
so
this is why,
this is why until we can migrate to where we have the electronic system, the payment system is very automatic. As someone can sit in Maryland, the bank can do electronic payment system, and you accredit in the system without any obstacle, it's fine. But until we can reduce the cash control, there's no need for us to say we're crossing our regional bank. The regional bank is very much crucial. It's very important. In fact, the banking that went to Lofa, some of the commercial bank closed in Lofa, because it will take them 4 days to get to Monrovia to get another cash if someone wants to do transaction. Why can't you have the central bank branch closer? It will relieve the commercial banks of whatever challenges they face.
Depu, and this is my problem exactly, right? It's twofold. In as much that we think it speaks to exactly why we're having this discussion. that there is a serious liquidity problem within our banking sector, that now the central bank has to play banking role. We're too small of a country. We're 5 million people in our country. In the great United States here, we have 12 regional banks, right? With for over 400 million people also right now, right? Liberia is only 5 million people. So you're trying to go and establish regional central banks in those various counties because the central commercial banks are having liquidity problem. So you're technically taking on the role of commercial banks and savings and loans within the country. So in a way, you're helping them to go out of business. It's like you're having mom and pop stores in a place, and you plant a Walmart there. The people will not go to the mom and pop stores anymore. They go into the Walmarts, right? So you're in that way, you're helping to cause the banking sector from expanding within in the country, which is exactly the problem we're talking about. There got to be, if there's a liquidity problem within the central banks and the commercial banks relationship, you have to find a cohesive way to address it, not to go plant central banks in various county, or because there is shortage there, right?
Gabriel, I don't think that central bank is taking over the role of commercial bank in this case. You have a practical scenario of something that is not in most of the African countries. That I know that he said I shouldn't go ahead. The bank is the central bank is improving to ensure that there's financial inclusion where you got mobile money system. Now all the mobile money exchange booths all across the country in the various counties. And sometimes when you go, you see people transfer the mobile money. You still have, this is a cash economy, and you send money to Cote d'Ivoire border to someone, he or she still have to use cash to transact in those areas. There's no electronic system to say you're going to go to a store and do a transaction and do a payment. So they still need cash. And if there's no cash availability, what happens? It still brings the confidence crisis. So the bank intervention with a regional opening, a regional office, for me, I think is a very good method. What is very much important that the bank is working on, and the country is a way of improving its service now, is to see how best to improve the mobile money system, and they also make sure that they have a automatic clearing system, that there will be 24-hour or just immediate transfer receipt across the country. That if your bank is making the transfer, you can have access to it. In the electronic system that you are talking about, mind you, this is where Liberia is a dedicated economy. As far as I'm concerned now, you need to do the electronic transaction, you need energy. So the guy who sits with a commercial bank in Vanjoma, the first thing that there is that for him to credit anything, if he doesn't have electricity, the assurance is there. He goes into the system says you got $5,000, but internet is gone off, generator is gone off. What will you do? So these are things that the constraints are all there. I gave you my experience. I drove to Riverside on the assessment, and we were there for survey, PAPD. I should have taken cash with me to carry, but I said, oh, mobile money. Also, mobile money is here. Got to the place, see how best to withdraw cash. I'm out of money. There's nothing you can force this man to do that when you say he doesn't have cash. You have money in your hand, in your phone, 20,000 Liberian dollar is sitting, but you cannot have fish you want to buy because the guy is looking for cash. He needs the cash to do it. But where we have a system, a payment system that in Kenya right now, where the M-Peso, market women are accepting it. Okay, you trade from that in a mobile money. Okay, pay me a mobile money. That's one of the strategies that central bank is supposed to work on. In fact, I remember one time I was doing a little review and went to central bank, and the deputy governor and I were discussing, and they were trying to see how best the Ministry of Commerce and the Ministry and central bank can come up with a resolution to say, look, all business owners should now go ahead and accept payment by mobile money. It's happening in Monrovia. Supermarkets are doing that. Well, a gas station, for me, I don't buy gas and go to the supermarket and carry cash anymore. That's good. But it cannot happen in Tapeta. It cannot happen in Vanjoma. Because the guy in Vanjoma is wondering, look, how do I go to Guinea to buy new goods when I cannot carry the mobile money to transfer Liberian dollar into Guinea CFA to get goods? It's not possible. So these are things that gradually we need to work on. If the payment system, where the digitization is also another stage, because these are stages we need to go by. With this availability of these services, it brings about financial inclusion, it brings about efficiency in the system, it also improve the growth of the economy.
We are on a 1 hour mark now, so I'm just requesting.
There's a whole lot to talk about, but I think we are
I'm
running out of time. But yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
requesting control for 15 or 30 more minutes. So because we need to go into we need to pivot into some other. But before we do that,
Right.
instead of going on a break, let me use this time to recognize some of today is Christmas Day, and we're doing this thing here. I got music playing in the background. I got food in the background. I'm sure other people that are here have those situations going on, but yet they're paying attention to us. So let me
Yeah.
recognize them on this Christmas Day. We got Olufemi Adams on the show here today. We got Otello Nayu. We got Perfect Manager Maurice Krumah. We got Tessa Ba. We got Flomo Livingstone. We got Emmanuel Jesse. We got
There are comments coming in.
and so far.
Yeah.
So the question that I wanted to ask is and that question I want us to pivot to we're talking about the printing of the money, the 48 billion over the next 3 years, of which 4 billion is already in the country. We are expecting 4 billion to come next year, first quarter, and so forth over a 3 years period. We'll come to that. I also want us to look briefly as the effect of illicit financial flows, which is my area. I've written a lot about that, and then quote unquote capital flight on this whole issue.
Mm-hmm.
But before we do that, Gabriel, I'm sure this question is for you. It's
Right.
from Tokpa Quill.
Right.
In terms of current ratio, how liquid and safe are the commercial banks in Liberia?
So I'm glad he asked that question. So as I think I mentioned earlier during this year, I think it was Alex, myself, and Delon. We look at the commercial banks. We even look at LBDI, right? At the time that we look at them, they were leveraged. When I mean leveraged, they were highly in debt. That if the average citizen were able to look at the balance sheets of these commercial banks, they would have done a bank run on them, right? They would have like literally gotten frightened and go and do bank run on them. They're very, very illiquid. This is part of the reason why we
Gabriel,
have this.
you keep mentioning bank run. I don't know.
So
Can you
bank run,
explain
that
what is
means
bank run to our people?
so bank run meaning that you could be you are afraid that the bank won't have money, so you just run to the bank and go take all your money from the bank because you're afraid that they might become insolvent or they might go bankrupt, right?
Okay, you can
Right,
proceed.
right. So at the time they were so illiquid, and everything about these liquidity challenges that we're having right now, it's speaking to that continuation of the illiquid problem that they've been having. I think Depu mentioned that, right? That people go to the bank to try to get money. They don't have their money in there. That tells you they themselves they're illiquid. If you can't have money, people going to you, you don't have money, that means that you're illiquid. So it's a serious problem, and this is not the first time, right? You can talk to many Liberians. I've too have experienced it. You go to bank trying to even take money out, they will tell you, oh, we don't have enough, come back for tomorrow or such and such time, because they don't want to give you all, either they don't have it or they don't want to give you all the money that you're asking for. So it's a persistent problem that we have had, and I think the governor, the central bank governor, actually did a good job highlighting that with this liquidity problem, he's trying to address that. But I just think the way they're going about it is the wrong way. They should strengthen the banking system so fundamentally it becomes sustainable, so we don't have to run into this problem anymore, as opposed to just, hey, let's print money and put money in there, and then you wait again for another 2 3 years, and then you have the same problem, and then it happen again. But banks in actuality in Liberia, they are they're having a liquidity problem. They're having a servicing problem. Now, if a lot of Liberian people knew that, they will do bank run and keep. And I think some of them know that. That's why they're holding their money out of the banking system. Some of them are aware of this. It's just that those who don't care are the one putting their money in. But this is why we need to deal with the problem fundamentally from a banking level structure, as opposed to central bank holding them by the hand and just continue to inject money into the economy, even when we're not in a crisis or such. Yeah.
This question is very interesting, because the reality is that the commercial banks themselves are mostly dealing with depositor issue, and they're more. I'll call them deposit bank, because the people can't deposit, withdraw. There is nothing, no other service, that make them very much viable. So almost like once they are only there for depositing and withdraw, it will obviously cause them to make their vulnerability. They need to introduce some other product. And one of the things that with this digitization, where you have central bank has come up with the commercial bank. Now they have what we call a push and pull. I've used that, push and pull. So the guy has his account in the commercial bank and want to do transaction on mobile money. He goes into a commercial bank account and transfer on a mobile money and send a mobile money to relative outside of banking system, outside of Monrovia. That is also helping to ease the challenges in there, and it's giving the confidence to the banking system. What is very much important is for the central bank to ensure that much better supervision, with this push and pull. I've tested that. That's what I said. Unfortunately for me, when I went to Riverside, with the push and pull, having gotten money from my account and gone my mobile money to get it from Riverside, it becomes difficult. So we have to look at it. The financial inclusion is, let me just briefly say what some of the things that they're doing right now. In as much as I would say I'm not defending the central bank, but from my engagement and research recently, when we were doing the financing strategy for climate change in Liberia, they don't have any product in terms of climate change decision making. The commercial bank have not touched on that yet. But the central bank is working with these people gradually to see, look, you need to now broaden your market and see what are the opportunities. And the financial inclusion working group that central bank has, they have the access to finance and credit working group. And that is with the commercial banks and other private major multilateral corporations, and they are part of it. They also have a digitalization committee. So they make sure that they digitize the system, and at the same time, the Consumer Protection Committee is there so that people will be protected tomorrow. If I'm taking my money to the bank and I cannot get it, we tell them no. So these are some of the constraints. But I will say clearly that the growth of the economy depends on the confidence level in the central bank and also in our commercial bank. The regulatory work, the central bank must be in a position to carry on regulation. Where the independence is given now to the central bank, I'm hopeful that in 2 years, these things can be resolved, where they are rolling out the whole financial inclusion, that the services will be available, that commercial banks will not be the only point of transaction, that individuals can use a mobile money to do payment abroad, and that you have same wave. You can sit here, the opportunity can be there that you can sit here and say, you know what, even the company among the business in Fanjama, telephone number, how much is the bag of rice? You sit here and just pay for the rice in Fanjama and tell the family go for it. These are the systems that we're moving gradually to, so that Liberia there will be access to capital and opportunity for growth.
You guys are making some great points. No, Gabriel, you hold on.
No, one second. Let me add.
You hold on. I'm the host of the program. You're not the host. You hold on.
You don't tell your host to hold on.
You guys.
Anyway, go ahead.
I gotta flex my muscles on you right now.
Okay.
It's good. I got my glasses, so
I know what's happening. Go ahead.
So, but I beg your pardon. The reason is I decided hold you there is because we have. It's surprising to this Christmas Day, and we have some very interesting comments from the viewers here.
Right.
And we need to delve into those comments. So I would beg your indulgence that you should go straight to the point, because the viewers are appreciating what you're saying,
Right.
Like what you say, they absolutely, they're appreciating what you're saying. But let's go to the point. So, Gabriel, yeah, come on.
No, what
Make your
I,
point.
I just wanted to echo something small in terms of what Depu said, in terms
Mhm.
of the the commercial banks in the country need to create more product instead of just becoming a deposit institution. And I agree with him. The reason why I agree with him, because this was actually something that I took from the central bank side as well, into on the annual, they come out with annual review of the economy every year, right? So in 2020, even though that was during the pandemic, commercial banks were only lending to manufacturing and construction. The service sector, the personal, the trade, the oil and gas, agricultural, public cooperation, extraction, even they were not lending to any of that. So I just wanted to echo what he said to that. That
Mhm.
that's actually one of their problems that is actually plaguing them from having liquidity within themselves. Right. That's all I wanted to say. But
Okay, so like I was saying, that the interesting things, comments here. Some of our viewers are asking for us to open the lines, and
we don't have
we
a
already
format,
gone,
do we?
12 minutes of the 30 minutes requested. So, and the fact that today is Christmas, so we don't have enough anchor, in the background to provide all
Yeah.
the services. So we will come to the money. Hmm? But let's talk about, and this is supported by questions from Maurice Kumar, um, Olufomin Adams, where I'm going to pivot now. This is
Go
okay,
ahead.
Dennis. So let's look at illicit financial flows vis-a-vis capital flight. Let's throw a little jab at that. How does that affect what is going on with the liquidity issue in our country? Anybody can.
Uh, At least that's one of the major concerns that all of us need to look at. With this financial inclusion, we have to look at where they will ensure that digitalization of transaction is something that people will not be able to hide, or what we call money laundering. Just take the buy money from somewhere and just bring it in the system and have access to the US dollar and get out. That's one of the problems that Liberia face. So one of the things that there is that the central bank has a regulation that individuals should not carry excess of more than $10,000. It shouldn't only be about traveling. It should also be that you should not hold not more than this asset outside of the home. So, but how can you enforce this when they need a cash? It's difficult. There's a need for follow-up mechanism. Security is a security threat. Illicit financial flow, to be very frank, is a security threat. It's where
Yes.
one of the vulnerability of the country is right now, because many people are coming in and taking cash, bringing cash in and cash out, not in the main banking system. So the banking system now should be looking for way how best to get hold of this kind of transaction. Commercial banks supervision is one major thing that need to be doing, and you are there, you know about that. So individuals, there are other deposits or transactions that are suspicious. If there's any suspicious transaction somewhere, it need to be reported. The central bank need to have control over that. Look, suspicious transaction on the way. How do we hold it? If these things are already in place, where we are all signed on to the international treaties to ensure that we look at global security, we can enforce that. The central bank now, I know fully well that as part of the financial intelligence unit, they play that role, but some of these things also need to have this political will for people to see the need that suspicion transaction, wherever it comes from, is supposed to be dealt with and penalized according to the law.
Yeah.
So,
No.
Depu, we have, and again, my questions are directed from the comments that I'm reading from the people, the viewers here, and I may not, read a particular comment. So, viewers, I'm looking at your comment actively, and that is directing the show at this point.
Yes.
So I've left the script altogether. I've gone to the comments.
Comments.
The reason is they are interesting, people taking their time. So we have largely an informal economy, largely. And then also we have the situation of the money changing situation in our country where the forex bureaus stuff, like if you go to Ivory Coast where it is institutionalized, it's there, you go to Ghana and those places. The forex bureau situation, to the best of my knowledge, the last time I checked, the central bank had really recognized one or two formal, and then others were online. I don't know whether they have improved. They have approved them now to operate formally. But even at that, as a country, one or two or three or four, money and recognized money changer, it is not enough. So, and with the economy being so much cash intensive, how is that impacting on the flow of money or the liquidity in our country, especially when it comes to illicit financial flow with the activities between us and Guinea, us and Sierra Leone, and other neighboring countries?
I wanted to maybe add to what Depu was actually saying. So and I think you mentioned something as well, the forex. This might seem radical, what I'm going to say, but the type of money changer we have in our country, they're not regulated. What do I mean? You have people who just go and set up this little box. How do you know the level of money of changing that's within his hand, right? And Alex, this is something you might be familiar with, and I think Depu actually mentioned that as well. In the banking sector, we have this. I think Depu mentioned that where you cannot carry more than 10,000 on you, right? If you go to a bank, and I think he mentioned that as well. We need regulations that where if you, Alice, go to a bank and withdraw more than 10,000 or anything close to that, there should be a suspicious activity report that goes to the central bank to now go to your unit, which you used to be working, the FIU, to say, okay, this guy came in and took such and such money, right? Now, if that continue over a time where you're doing, where you're layering, where you go here today, you take, less than 10,000, let's say 999, and you go to another, it should create a level of suspicion that will go to the FIU if hopefully they're still
So
in existence.
Gabriel, at this point, I'm not talking about the kulaf shooter gulaf. I'm asking real life question. So I need you to give me real life answers. For the question that these people are asking.
Alex,
Yeah.
Alex, this is where the issue of state security and financial transactions become very important.
That's what I was trying to get to, right? But go ahead.
Because
but you're trying to get there because we don't have a lot of time.
No, let me land. That's what I was trying to say, right? If we had if the banking sector was actually reporting these type of things, we won't have this what is it, capital flight, right? Where in the same thing with the money changers, right? You can't regulate those people. How do you need to be able to regulate these people? So if I were you, I would say dismantle them and do what they do in actual countries, what the country that want to take control of their financial system, put them in a bank. Put them in a bank. Any money changing should be in a bank, or they should be fully integrated within the system that you can regulate them. If you don't do that, we will continue to have this problem, right? You can, in as much that companies are making profit and taking it out of that, the money changers as well, they have too much exposure to the money that US dollar they're collecting on the street that they can funnel it out of the country easily without it being tracked. We're not tracking those people. So to me, those are the two fundamental things that I think we can address, right?
Depu.
Yes, Alice, the reason why I brought in the state security issue is that once the security apparatus are aware that no individual is supposed to carry raw cash exceeding $10,000 without declaring that, the enforcement become a problem where you need to have a mechanism. I know all of you know what it was before.
Yeah.
To have order the immigration, the border control, and all of these officers themselves being a part of this transaction, because now it's more about economic security. What is becoming risky there is that when these
But Depu, I can tell you straight, your PEPs are the one who move more money.
Huh?
You're making. Don't make this political.
Your PEPs are the one who move. No, I'm talking about.
Don't make it political. Let him.
No,
I'm coming. Ellis.
The
That's
PEPs are the one who move more money.
I'm coming now. That's what I'm trying to say now. If you make this thing a law, a crime, and you make it is added as a crime, that look, if this guy is caught with more than excess or more than this amount,
it is a crime, though. It's a law
taking place, you need to enforce it. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that, the traders. It's not only the traders. If you've got politically exposed people who hold a cash and have such amount, there's a fine. And you hold this amount, this transaction is suspicious. There's no business on transaction going on anywhere. There's no investment. How did you get the cash? This is where you know how Nigeria is doing the EFL. Nigeria is doing it. So even those who are now connected to these transactions also have the ID number in the system to track wherever there's a linkage. So you need to go after the connections. If you have a transaction with a bank or you're moving money from one point to another, and that has to be arrested, because the reality is, look, people are involved into bigger transactions than the cash that they hold or they earn or income they have. Right. So that's why you need to have the regulation. The regulation already on the book. The only thing that there is the wherewithal and the ability to enforce it, which many people will say, look, oh, I'm not doing it because of security. And it boils back down to Liberian policy implementation, lack of the will to implement policy.
Right. So, Depo, you hit the nail on the head, and you were there, right? So, for example,
including you.
I'm not going to talk about specific cases for confidentiality and stuff like that, but I will talk broad issues, right?
Yeah.
Do you know that somebody can come to your country, to Liberia, open a company, register a company, and move millions of dollars without doing a single business in Liberia?
Yes, that's what I'm saying, because when the security Ministry of Commerce, this is where we had a conversation. I think the central bank is working on this policy. They have to come up with that. So the Ministry of Commerce is responsible for business registration. And Ministry of Commerce is responsible for price control and transaction. Ministry of Commerce and the central bank having an agreement that you will now allow people to deposit and withdraw using mobile money or other transactions. And at the same time, businesses that are registered in the system, businesses account how to be disclosed. Business information is not for the public, but information sharing. Like a company register, but the company is taking away billions of dollars. How much is the company asset? What was the asset declared? And there where the security apparatus movement come in. The airport security, the national security, in all of these will have to come into work, because realistically, this is where
I'm not talking about physical movement of money. I'm talking about money transfer through the bank.
Yeah.
I'm not
money transfer through the bank.
I will come to physical movement of money. Do you know do you know that people physically move thousands of dollars physically through the system?
Yes.
And that's why I was talking about your PEPs.
That's where
this is where you need to know the transaction, the source of the transaction, before coming to the bank. Because if the company is operating, the company is into, let's say, cell phone, or it's into diamond, and because all of these things are linked, you need to declare the diamond. So, and where was it? How much was it? So these are all of the whole chain. Where you need is more national security, as I said, it's more national security interest. Because the illicit financial flow is not only because someone is going to the bank, it started from the source of the investment. Yeah. If company is coming in, where is the company? If wasn't country of origin, what are the mother company? What's the capital declared by the mother company? The one that is registered in Liberia, what's the capital, declared? Once you know that, in the end, you can check on that. If there's no check on it to see, it becomes illicit form. And you have to be found for that. And you can hold on to that. And the central bank has the right to find any bank that carry on transaction that is not is suspicious, it has not been declared, you find them, obviously.
But Alex,
Do
that is an
you
area.
know that the FIU, do you know that the FIU make great strive to report these things? And you mentioned the word enforcement, unfortunately. And do you know that the transfer regime in Liberia, the regulation governing the transfer regime in Liberia is so weak that allow these things to happen? That people
That's why then we are saying the
allow
same
this
thing, Alex.
movement of money.
Regulations.
The regulation need to be there. That look, you are not supposed to transfer more than this amount a day. This first of all, why will one company transfer millions of Liberian dollar, US dollar in a day for what purpose?
So let's not jump into the.
Let us not go into that. But the issue here, Alex, let's go to important matter here, because realistically, the PEP is something that we have to discuss at another time. It's a big issue. You gotta look at it, it's a big issue. But one of the things I want to also look at is that what affect the economy, what affect the poor people. Because one of the things that I'm saying is that the transaction cost for the poor is higher than the transaction cost for the rich guys. If you don't have access to finance, I'll tell you this, that you have agriculture farmer who is in loafer that needs to pay his worker. Just to get cash to his employee and worker, he cannot have it because he has his account in the bank. It also store his production. And they go to the commercial bank is not able to pay the money. Therefore, they will say, no, as of now, I don't want check. Bosman gave my money. This is where the confidence crisis is, that we need to hold the banking system accountable, and the central bank has to take control of this in terms of supervision. Another issue that central bank is also faced with, and which I know that thank God that they have done the new printing, is that the central bank needs to be recapitalized. And central bank needs to be recapitalized. I'm quite sure with this printing and whatever decision it is right now needs to be done by the national government.
So to wind down on the conversation and to pivot to the money, the printing of the money, let me play the devil's advocate here. Right now, last year before last, around this time, we're making noise. People were not, Decembrists, the people who visit Liberia were complaining they're not getting access to the money. They go to the ATM, no money there. People want to, go to the bank for their money, and not there. People send their money, they want to go to the exchange, to the place to collect their Western Union or their MoneyGram, money not there, and stuff like that. But this year, we're not hearing that noise. This Christmas, with the bicentennial being celebrated with all these more people visiting Liberia now than in the last previous years. There are more people, but we're not hearing that complaint.
Yes, because this is where I told you that in 2019, at the time they brought money, you talk about $96 billion in the system, right? Right now, as we speak of the second quarter of 2021, which was June, report from the central bank says that the brought money has increased to 143 billion, whereas the money outside the banking sector remains constant, almost from 16 million is around 18 million. But the money in terms of transfer and deposit increased from 44 million to 120 million. It means that there's improvement, the vast improvement. The central bank is getting control of the cash and using other means of transaction that they can control the economy. And that's what we're talking about, financial inclusion. This is where we're supposed to focus. That at the end of the day,
so what role is the printing of this new money?
I won't want to agree with that though. I won't agree with that.
The printing of the new money? No. We're gonna go to the printing of the new money. I'm talking about the confidence level now in the system that causing people to go to the bank and get their money back. Because central bank have ensured that with the use of the TB, they have gotten some cash outside the banking sector and brought it back into the economy. And they are also using they push and pull the transaction system to have things done. That is giving an opportunity and more transaction going on. And velocity, the circle, number of times the dollars turn around now, it's better. The economy is growing. That's why we see it as an opportunity. And for me, I think that should be the central bank role, to focus on the supervision side, to ensure that the payment system is correct, that you also have digitalization taking place, automatic system, people have their cash automatically.
Debu, are you saying that people are getting confidence? Because one of the problems we had was confidence in the banking system, because people go for their money, they don't get their money and stuff like that. Are you saying now that there's confidence being restored in the banking system?
I think he's frozen.
He's frozen.
Let him speak before I come in.
Yeah, Gabriel, come in.
No, I highly doubt it, and that's the confident. There's still a liquidity problem within our banking sector. Let's not kid ourselves. That's the reason why.
No, but Gabriel, you can't speak a statement like that when you have to give reason why you're making that statement. Because yes,
I just quoted you the central bank.
I drew a parallel here. People a few years ago, including last year Christmas, people were making noise that they didn't, and it was actual. But this year, you don't.
What happened last year? What happened last year?
People,
how much money did we?
You cannot withdraw. Excuse me, I'm sorry to say this. People could not withdraw more than $5,000. But right now, you can withdraw as much money you need to withdraw. The next thing which I'm also saying is that you can carry on your transaction to some of the supermarkets. You go to supermarket, people who are Decemberists. Let me just say the Decemberists. I go to supermarket right now. Most of the supermarket,
you can say Decemberists.
you go to gas station, you go to supermarkets. Right now, you don't need to go to the commercial bank to have cash to do transaction. You just get to the bank and get to the gas station and say mobile money. You pay for your gas and pass. You go to the supermarket, you call for your goods and just on the shelf and pay right there and pass. You use your Visa card, you use whatever transaction card you have and pass. And
here's my question. Here's a problem I have with that. In as much that I think the digitization of our financial system may have played a little bit of role in terms of easing this money liquidity problem that we're having within our economy, the bulk of the challenges that we're having is being handled because of how many times did we have money infused in our economy last year? And what is happening right now in this December, how much money that we're infusing, right? Let's not kid ourselves. And usually when you talk to people, they would tell you the way Liberia economy is different from every other economy. Only time central bank's supposed to keep pumping money into an economy, that's if there's let me land, you will come in. That's if there's a challenge. Like if you're rebounding from, let's say, if we were continue to be in this COVID era where there's challenges within that, I would say yes, you can keep pumping money there, keep putting money in there for liquidity problem because the banks will be short, right? But we're out of the system. Last year, I think the money, how much was it? I think about $100 million that was brought in to be infused. Recently, we have another $48 billion that is about to be infused in the period in session periods, right? If we had confidence, if people had confidence in the economy, if we had the liquidity that we needed to have within this banking sector, will we still be having the central bank infusing money in the economy to keep carrying it through in this festive season without it? Will we still have that? That's the problem that I'm having here. We keep having a central bank that keep fusing money into the economy, right? And every time it happens, we will. I show you. I can hopefully. I wish Daniel was able to put that on the screen. The statement from the central bank governor is that because they put in their $4 billion in the economy because of the festive season, right? Because they anticipate the level of transaction that will be happening and people in the country. That's why he put it in there. But also, in addition to that, he said they're putting in there to deal with the ongoing liquidity that has been happening year over year. Go on the central bank website, you will see the statement that I'm talking about, right? Wait, let me land.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to say that we have confidence within. People don't have confidence in the banking sector. The money is outside of the banking sector. We have to keep putting money in there to make it seem as if there's confidence in there. If there were confidence in there, we wouldn't be infusing this quantum of money in our economy in a market that is growing and expanding.
Gabriel, the discussion is getting interesting, and you maybe I'm beating on you, for nothing, because you have some support from the comments here, right? Daniel T. Johnson says, Alex, he say, Alex, aside from what Depuzo is saying, the real reason why Decembrists aren't complaining today is simple. They made use of precautionary measures, so they brought physical cash. You don't
That's
need
what is
rocket
happening.
science to
Yeah.
explain that to you.
Yeah.
Right? Simple. Then he also went out and said, Decembrists brought in their own dollars.
Thank you.
No way. So what you're
Yep.
explaining, that because the government used T-bills, like you're saying, Liberia, the government used the transactional system, which is the push and pull, and then the mobile money system, right? While it is true that the mobile money system is working to some extent, it's solving the liquidity problem we
It's
had 2
not.
years ago.
It's not.
Or
That's why they
is
keep
it the
pumping
fact that
money in
people
there.
took precaution by holding their cash? Of course, you can't travel with, you can travel with more than 10,000, but you have to declare it. But I mean, you know that 5,000, 6,000, or even 2,000 is enough to take you to Liberia to ball for a month and come back. Once you have your round trip ticket.
If I say here today that a liquidity problem has been solved, I'll be very much unfair to the Liberian people and to myself professionally. No.
I went supporting you.
I said there are no. I said there are improvements. There are improvement. Let us acknowledge improvement in the system than to say it have remained and it's still the same. No, exactly. There are improvements.
That I agree with you.
Because the transaction, if you look at the central bank report, the volume of transaction through mobile money has increased substantially. And besides that, the deposits, individual deposits have increased substantially because now there are much more confidence in the banking system. I'm not saying that the liquidity challenge there have been resolved. One thing that is very much important is that say something is improving and to say something has already improved is another thing. It's improving. You cannot tell me that almost all of the people who went over there with cash on hand, the cash they have, they will use it to the camp. Some of them will run out of money.
So Depu, let me hold you there because Olufemi is asking a question, and that is backed by a statement made by Maurice Krumah. Olufemi is saying, be specific. What improvement are you talking about? Now, Maurice Krumah said the T-bills was there. Was the T-bills you're talking about? Because one of the things you're saying that is bringing confidence back was one, the T-bill, the transaction system, and the mobile money. Now, Perfect Manager is saying, Maurice Krumah is saying, but we all know that the T-bill was there, Mrs. Wood, when we still had the liquidity issue. The T-bill has always been there. What has changed with the T-bill dramatically now?
The reality there is that there have been more access to cash now from the use of this service. Commercial it's no longer limited. Maurice Krumah is aware that it was limited among commercial banks. It's open. Once it's open, companies and individuals are now having the opportunity to participate. So it has increased substantially. So that I can tell you clearly. I don't know whether I should go to central bank report and say, let's go this. I want you to understand this. Yes.
Depu, you also talk about the confidence in the system. Olufemi is asking, what percentage of the population has access to bank account? That has dramatically improved the situation, like you said.
I was just going to ask.
Let me come out to say this clearly. Liberia as a country, the first thing that there, in terms of how many people have access to bank account at the time in 2017, is 17%. So you should
fast forward 2021, how many percent?
Oh, it's 38%. So you see
that number seems to jump from your head.
It's not jumping from my head. That's what I'm
saying. You just found the computer. The 17% you look at the computer.
Yeah, but that's what I'm looking at central bank report at the same time. But what I'm letting you to know here is that the Liberians first of all, people, because of the cash economy, people are not used to banking system. So these are some of the reasons why we need to build a system where you will build confidence in terms of the whole financial inclusion, that people will use other means of storing money and spending it. Because if you think that the only way you store money is to go through the bank for transaction, it becomes difficult. And I will tell you clearly,
Go ahead, finish, land.
And I will tell you clearly that that's why the commercial banks need to come up with other products to ensure that there is financial services in the country. The commercial banks, I will tell you clearly that one survey that we did, that the people have confidence more in the community club more than commercial banks. The citizens, they trust the community bank, the club, more than the commercial banks.
So that means you just counter everything that you've been saying the entire show. That everything that the central bank
why am I countering?
Was to build confidence. It has brought people within the banking system, but now you're saying the people have more
for you,
confidence.
But that's what brought the system. That's what brought the financial inclusion. That's what brought the financial inclusion strategy. Because if people don't have confidence in the system, they prefer going to the bank, a susu club that can give them money and this kind of money at this percent and come back. But you need to have a system and say, look, you need to make the service available to the people. Let them have access to their cash, and that will improve the system. That will improve the system.
I will tell you this to you. I will say this to you.
Gabriel, before you make a comment, let's welcome Mr. King.
Yes, sorry.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm just enjoying this show, man. To everybody that's listening, Merry Christmas. It's a family time, so a little bit delayed coming on board. The beginning got some gifts. We're able to access our money a lot easier so we could buy the gifts. And we went to the store. I didn't even have to use my cash. I used my card, and bam, we got it.
Nice.
Well, my man, you get plenty train your house though.
Oh yeah, my man. No, I just got one, but it's cereal for all of us.
Oh, you know, I'm talking about the cereal. You're smart.
Yeah. So where are you? Are you in Liberia?
No, I'm not in Liberia. I'm actually here in the U.S., California side.
Okay.
That kitchen look like LeBron kitchen to you.
Hey, Jesus. All right, let me get back. Let me get back to what I wanted to say. Therefore, this is what I wanted to say, not just to you, but I think the audience and the Liberian people, right? I'm not trying to say, the efforts from the central bank, whether their financial inclusion strategy, the mobile money, their expansion to opening a central bank in regional office in Wanga hasn't helped. It has helped. This liquidity problem that we're having right now is not, and I think that's one thing I had to say as well. I'm not attributing this to just this government alone. This is something that's been in existence for the previous administration as well. I think they had it the most. It's just been exacerbated in this administration, right? In as much that those efforts have helped in terms of bringing money within the economy and bringing people to whatever level of confidence, it still fundamentally remain a bigger problem on our central banks and the commercial banks. The central bank lacks the regulation they need to solve this problem, and in as much they're literally hand holding these commercial banks by the hands now to now say, hey, you can't do this. We will continue to keep putting money within the economy. Every now and then, just follow this process. Every now and then, they come in and infuse money into the economy, right? Even when there is no global challenges going on around the world, right? There's this still liquidity problem that persists, right? And this is why we're talking to this is why we're speaking to this money that is just about to be infused within the economy. It is to solve this problem as well. They're just putting a band-aid on it, right? Because it is group of people that are coming in within, they expect within this period. That's why they're putting the money in. But the bigger question remains: how do you take that money out when the time leaves? That's something they don't have to worry about, because we have this illicit money flowed out of the country. So it will take itself out, and we will 3, 4 months, 5 by the end of the next year again, we'll be dealing with the same problem, right? So that's the problem that we're having here. There's a serious liquidity problem, and it should have been addressed at the from the beginning when we came out of this war, we're supposed to put the fundamental things in place to deal with that. That if a bank's even if a commercial bank isn't complying with those rules, you shut it down. You shut it down, right? You shut it down. And we're not doing that. As you rightly pointed out, the regulations are on the books, but we're not applying them. And instead, we're moving from the regulation and hand holding these banks by the hands, and it's continuing to drain down the economy. That I bet you this growth that we're expecting next year at 4.2, if we don't have this level of liquidity within the economy, we will not achieve real growth that we expect. If we won't amount to that level of 4% growth, So I agree with you. There's some improvement, but fundamentally, it still remains a problem. And from the last administration to this administration as well.
Thank you.
Thank
Go ahead,
you.
Alex. Go ahead. We got a break after that. I would like to chime in. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, before we break, we'll take a break, a commercial break. We got to talk. We got to make some money here from our people who support the program to give some advertisement, and then we'll come back with wind down. They said Kana Kai send money to Africa. How to send money to Africa? Enter, send amount, choose a recipient, choose payment method, and bam, you're there. It's so easy. Kana Cash is the latest on the block. You can get your app from the Google Play, or you can get it from the Apple Store. So those of us who use the G phone and the Q phone, we can do to Google Play, and those who use the iPhone can go to the Apple Store and download the Kana Cash application and send money. Voila. Focus on Africa, says President. We are celebrating Christmas with the people, and they will be interviewing Smith Toby, who is the Deputy Presidential Press Secretary, will be coming on tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 7 p.m. Liberia time, which is 11 a.m. my time, the Central Time. We'll also be bringing on Point with Jerome and George, discussing and debating the issues. So we'll be having George Tule, who is a co-host, as well as Jerome Gaiman, who is also a co-host on that program. They will be discussing something tomorrow. Corruption and Human Rights, Focus on Liberia, presents James N. Verdier, who is a former chairman of the LACC, as well as your humble servant here, who is a former director of the FIU. That will be hosted by Dennis Gad. That will be tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be 5 p.m. Central Time. And of course, it'll be late in Liberia. Okay, welcome back to the show. We will be wrapping up at now because we're getting to 2 hours in the program. William King, do you have any question or comment?
Thanks very much. One of the things that I do want to say is, after looking at a lot of the central bank actions and a lot of the various entities within government, including the finance ministers and so forth, is we're trying to solve this issue, and I think it requires maybe a little bit more input than just one entity. And I know we've been looking at just the central bank, but Gabriel and Alex and Depo, you guys touched on a couple of things that I kind of found very amazing, and I think that could potentially help solve a lot of our liquidity problem. One is technology. I think we're severely challenged because our technology focuses on Central Monrovia, but when you go outside, technology, because of the cost and the accessibility to the internet, it doesn't look like something that more people are motivated to really use, especially the farmers. The other piece, or the other arm that I actually looked at, was production and manufacturing. We don't do that a lot. And when we're not doing that a lot, it creates a situation where the central bank is printing the money to provide to the consumers, and the consumers are buying, and that money is leaving. And right now, we don't have enough of an incentive or some kind of motivation or whatever to keep that money circulating in the economy. and I think that we're challenged with that. Regulation, I must say, the central bank has definitely come a long way. More regulation is needed, but they've improved drastically from last year. So I think technology, regulation, production, and lastly, electricity. I think with that, those are four components, and it will be interesting to see how our government is able to kind of align those four to the different ministries and see how we can kind of get that to the point where it's not just one arm doing a lot of heavy lifting. And right now it looks like central bank, because they've been in the news a lot, they're doing a lot of heavy lifting, and they've really said to themselves, you know what, this seat is too hot, and how can we alleviate some of that pain right now? And trust me, printing this money and putting it out there and not having any issues within the news that, oh, there's a shortage of money, it gives them some breathing space. But those other issues need to be tackled, and I'm not sure how African Development Bank and the other entities are moving and how fast they are. But if not, I think we will run into the situation where mid-year there will be another printing of money, and also at the end of the year. So we can gauge if we find a solution with maybe the quantity of dollars that are being printed. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So at this point, we're about to wind down. We're getting to 2 hours, but I like to deliberately open between Gabriel and Depu here. When you understand what I mean by kuti.
Yes,
because I come to waste somebody coming to get some of the government for today, right? Depu and Gabriel, who will get their friend government for because when we started where a little Gabriel was in the seat there, and Depu were giving him punches. But towards the half mark of the show, Gabriel started giving Depu punches, and so we're coming to see who will learn some punches and take blood from some of them off.
Yes, Alex, it's not the issue of punches right now.
You're a big instigator.
I know him. Alex, you were asking me the number. I'm not too sure, but then I'm close to the number. It's good for us to look at the financial statistics of the central bank. Realistically,
but before we go there, let me recognize some more people who joined. I know Daniel Johnson joined and he came up with a big comment. William King, okay, you're in the studio. We have William Ponder, one of our economic czar, has just joined, and Roosevelt Divine has joined us. Florence Taylor is watching us. But let me read something from William Ponder here. He says, whereas the introduction of T-bills has helped somewhat, the liquidity crisis is due in part to leakages within the financial system. There are major structural inadequacies related to market infrastructure. Liberia has a disproportionately large number of foreign-based banks with limited engagement in promoting domestic investment and entrepreneurship. So that's a thing. But let's go back to Depu. I think we all agree that there is some improvement, right, in the system. But it seems as though the way you put it is being overplayed. For example, you talk about the T-bills. And that is what William Ponder and other people are talking about. Other people have made comments, for you to straight, like one of our, like Morris has said, but the T-bill was there when we had the liquidity issues. What has changed?
He said it opened it up.
And you talk about the 17% unbanked versus the 38%, which has been challenged as well by some of the commenters here, and it looks as if you said you're beginning to double down on that number.
Let me say this to you.
So
I can forward the central bank financial statistics report to you now. one of the things that you need to look at, it's good for us to be talking from the data. If you look at the report in terms of broad money arrangement, the components that there is that you will see that transferable deposits in the time past, they were very low. It grew from 47 billion to 77, which is practically almost like 62% growth. The same thing with other deposits. It improved from 32 billion to 45, which is 39%, which I was saying 38%, meaning that there's much confidence in the system because deposits were very low. So instead of us sitting down and just assuming, sometimes it's good to look at the data. I don't know how they derive, but central bank is deriving this from the transaction with the commercial banks. So that is something that they collect and see it. So it means that there are some improvement. I'm not saying that the central bank has actually done its best to reach the optimum. In terms of the comment from Pondo, which I agree, we have to see it. I told you earlier that the national economic security problem, that we have most of the commercial banks are internationally owned. In terms of depositor security, it's something that central bank need to be looking at. How do you protect the depositors? One of the things that they are also improving on is the insurance scheme. It was never in our financial services before. Right now, the central bank has ensured that they bring in the insurance industry under the central bank. Did you ever hear that? It's part of the financial inclusion system.
So, Depu, let me ask you a closing question. We don't want to go over 2 hours. We got 3 more minutes. Let me ask you a closing question.
Yes.
The question is, why is there no noise about availability of money this Christmas season as compared to previous Christmas season? Is it because confidence has been restored in the banking system because of the things you mentioned, the T-bill, the transaction system, the mobile money? Or is it because the $4 billion has come in to cushion the activities during the festive season, which the government intended in the first place? Or is it because the Decembrists, quote unquote, brought in the precautionary cash, or a combination of all those things?
Okay, let me say this. The first thing that there is that,
statement.
Yeah, my closing statement is that there have been improvement in the financial inclusion in the system in terms of digitalization, which is already ongoing. You got it, the mobile money system is working effectively in some places outside of Monrovia as well. And the issue of the infusion of the $4 billion, the reason why I, as a professional, I would not want to confidently say yes is that because we don't know when it was injected and how it has circulated in the system. So it cannot be the reason for now. The next thing that there is that, yes, the Decembrists might carry it.
Because you don't know how it was infused and whether it was infused?
I don't know whether it had been infused or it's infused. First of all, to know when it was infused and how fast it went in the system. So I cannot speak to that because there's no data here for that. The next thing that there is that we can say the combination of both the availability of financial services in terms of inclusion, the payment system being there, and the availability of the December cash availability, that they carry the cash and use it. That one making this festive season more relaxed and better than what it was last year. And for me, I think it will contribute to growth because with the cash going in for transaction to take place, an individual having the opportunity to have ease of transaction, it will lead to growth. What is very much difficult that we need to focus on as a country is to look at the real sector growth in terms of what happened in investment in the real sector, what happened in investment in the agriculture sector, what happened to the service sector, which is, in fact, it has more growth now, more contribution to GDP growth compared to agriculture because the service sector is contributing more. These are areas where the commercial banks need to now improve their services and lending that can grow the economy. And for me, that should be our focus. In terms of printing money, I don't have confidence in the printing money as a solution to the challenge we have. That's what I can say. Thank you.
Gabriel, same question to you in terms of parting comment.
I will close on the last statement that he actually, I mean, the last sentence in a statement that he just made, that the printing of money, as far as to solve this liquidity problem is not the solution. I think over the period of this discussion, we've shared some solutions, but I think fundamentally the central bank need to take a front role to not just focus on printing money to solve the problem, but actually strengthen the financial system, the banking system, right? They also need to build a cohesive financial system. That means ones that businesses can rely on, businesses and people can rely on to be able to meet the capital needs within the financial market. They also need to, this regulation that we have on the books, they need to enforce those regulations, right? Whether it's from the illicit money capital flight regulation, things that we have on the books, they need to enforce those things, right? And they also need to focus on access to capital, right? In as much that this whole financial inclusion of mobile money is helping, they need to make it physical, because people are not too technologically savvy, and also there's infrastructure problem, whether you're looking at the light or internet, all of those things, right? You need to create some kind of incentives to bring physical banks to people. Once you get them to establish that confidence within those physical banks, brick and mortar banks, then you can now focus on your process, the next strategy onto the electronic system. So for me, those are the 3-4 items that I think this central banks need to focus on. And lastly, they need to focus on building a production-based economy. You cannot continue to print money and put it in the economy and expect just because people going into the economy, they will absorb it and absorb it and absorb it. You need to create a financial system that is production based, and I think William actually mentioned some of that as well. So for me, I think those are some of the things that the central bank need to look at, as opposed to this whole holding the central bank by the hand by continuing to print money and put it within the economy. We will run, if we keep doing that, we will kick this can down the road, and a few months from now we will meet that same can down there again with the same problem inside. This time it might become even more rusty. That if we kick it, we might get our toes bleed. So I will leave it on that note.
Okay, unfortunately, I'm playing host today, so I can be a guest, so I can.
You can still give your
You can still give your opinion. A comment.
I want to hear a last comment, if any, from William, so that we can close this.
Yeah, thank you. So in closing, what I have to say is this. More growth in these sectors like Depu mentioned, agriculture, construction, mining, right? We see the numbers going up. It's a fact. The central bank numbers show that. So more growth in this area, it will generate more sales. But stopping capital flight and more involvement of Liberian as shareholders in their economy will continue to remain elusive, unless we can establish at best a fundamental basic capital market where people can invest in businesses of their choice more efficiently.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Access to credit. No, I'm saying access to credit. That's why central bank need to see how best the regulation to fight on our financial inclusion. That's it.
But you said access to credit, but I want to take a step further and say, hey, a fundamental capital market like the New York Stock Exchange. Now, when the New York Stock Exchange started, it wasn't as complex and big and dynamic as it is today. But we just need to have something from the private sector where we can go in and say, hey, you know what? This guy he's starting a manufacturing company to produce rubber, like the Jetty Brothers. Hey, they're starting this. They are offering us shares for $1 or 50 cents, and we can choose to buy in it or not. Right now, that's not available.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for taking my Christmas. My Christmas is on you.
Okay, my Christmas on you. My Christmas on you. Thank you for taking your time off on this Christmas day for Gabriel, Depu, William, for coming to join us on this program. You could have been doing something else like me now. I'm getting more pressure from the family to come outside. But and I especially want to thank our listening audience here and the people who commented on the program here. Even though we had our script, like I said, but at a certain point we put the script aside and we focus on the comments because it was important to do that. And so we want to thank you all for your great comments. If we didn't read your comments, we apologize. There are a lot of comments and it shifted the direction we're going on. So thank you very much. But before we leave, I'd like to throw in just few seconds. I'd like to throw in something for Gabriel and Depu here. So Morris Kroman said, Depu, I think he was talking to, he said, that's great news when you are closing, DZ, if there is insurance scheme. Diana Johnson said, thanks, DZ, for outlining that the printing of new banknote is not a solution to the liquidity problem we have. Olufemi Adams said, but printing money is simply deficit spending. This will eventually lead to hyperinflation.
Mm-hmm.
Then Perfect Manager closed by saying, great show, gentlemen. But the gentleman thing, we need, focus on like, bro, we need to bring some ladies here to spice this thing up.
I know.
Interspice this thing up. So, Gabriel, what do you say about those Depu, what do you say about those two things so we can close this thing?
I will take the last statement from Kroman. I think he's right about that, and that's one of the implications that I think we kind of breezed over it, right? Especially in an economy that is not producing, right? And if an economy is producing and you get the chance to say there's demand that is causing that production, that you can print money to fund that that expansion, I would say okay. But because we're not a production-based economy, printing money and putting it in an economy that is not producing, I think I alluded to that at some point, right? After the season, you have to now worry about how you're going to take that money out of the economy. If you don't do that, it's going to haunt you by imposing another self-inflicted inflation. That's another problem you have to deal with, right? How do you do that? We don't have this thing what the federal government have where you can raise interest rates to deal with that, increase the cost of capital to deal with that, right? We don't have that in Liberia. We do, but we never use it. So if we're not careful, we will, we'll shoot ourselves in the legs by putting this quantum of money in our economy. And this is not the first time. We're about to do it over quarterly. We're about to put money in the economy quarterly, right? So I think he's right by pointing that out, and that's another thing that the central bank and the head honchos within our economy have to worry about. That if you're not careful, you'll cause a self-imposed inflation.
Yeah, it was Olufemi Adam who really asked that question.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Depu, any comment?
Yes, I think the issue of self-imposed inflation is very much important. One concern that we raised before to the central bank is the old thing that Liberians have also been raising, that you got why it's true that the various commercial banks are foreign-owned. The multilateral corporations that are also investing in the economy, they don't hold their capital in the economy, is completely outside of the country. So where you have a scheme before that you have to deposit 25% of your capital into the country or sales in the country will help, because, for example, you got metal steel. If you happen to say 25% holding within the country, it protects the economy as well, because almost every international organizations and everything, because of this whole lack of confidence, they keep their money out of the system. It will keep. How do you really have access? Those who want to invest domestically. So central banks need to be more, now that they have gotten the independence, they need to be more rigid. They need to be forceful in the implementation of most of the policy, and that I think it will help us. And they need to help the microfinance institutions that are also coming. the improvement of the microfinance institution, the insurance scheme, and everything. These are the best way that we can improve the economy. That people
But
can.
you say you keep saying central bank got an independent. They were not having an independent one.
No, it wasn't. Central bank, they out of 1999. I will tell you that central bank did not have full authority. So it is
they just never leverage it. They did, but they just never leverage it.
That debate will be something next time. But I tell you that this
different day.
Another day. But I know exactly what
this current amendment for me, it has a very comfort zone. It got a better buffer now than what it was before.
Thank you. So, gentlemen, at the end of the day, we want to appreciate you for coming. We want to appreciate our viewers. We want to appreciate the people who commented once again. Merry Christmas from the Focus on Liberia family on behalf of our CEO, Dennis, and Anthony, who I believe is doing something else today. Thank you very much from Gabriel, myself, from William, and all our crew at Focus on Liberia. At the end of the day, the Quiti, it went drew, like one of my men said, it went drew. That means it drew. Nobody wasted our friend at the end of the day. So
I'll catch the man on the beach again. I'll put saying it out.
Okay, gentlemen, we are thank you. We are out. At least the game was fair. It went drew. Yeah. Like somebody say. So you give.
All right. Liberia is our home.